Hello everyone, welcome to another Hometown Mentors video. I'm Peyton.
And I'm Aaron. And today we're going to talk about standardized testing, which means the ACT and the SAT. Now, since the ACT and the SAT have very similar content, most colleges don't have a preference on which one you take, so it's best to consider the structure and see which one fits you the best.
So the SAT is made up of four main parts: reading, writing, language, and math. The ACT is mainly made up of reading, English, math, and science reasoning. The SAT is graded on a scale from 400 to 1600, while the ACT is graded on a scale from 1 to 36. Both tests take approximately 3 hours, but if you opt to take the essay, that's going to be an additional 45 minutes.
Now, although the essay is optional, we would advise that you do take the optional essay. And this is because a lot of colleges have the expectation that you take it, so you'll be able to apply to a wider range of colleges because they want you to take that essay as part of your application.
So for the ACT, the essay is going to ask you to take a stance on a particular issue and say whether or not that's good or bad for humanity based off what they say. And usually they won't pick anything wildly obscure, and what you say you can usually answer with your past experiences.
So let's say that the prompt is, what are the perks of eating healthy? So what you'll do is you'll analyze the author's stylistic and their persuasive arguments and then try to come to a conclusion of how you think they present their ideas and their argument for that essay.
And this may sound confusing, but there are a plethora of practice tests that you can find online, or it might be helpful to get some sort of ACT, SAT study book as well.
So for both the SAT and the ACT, you'll notice that they both have a math section that cover Algebra 1 and Algebra 2, as well as geometry. However, you'll notice that the SAT doesn't have a science section, but in the reading section, there will be a scientific passage that you have to analyze. But on the ACT, there is a science section, which mostly covers graphs and analyzing tables and graphs with scientific data.
The English sections of both tests will ask you to read passages and correct them for grammar. And finally, the reading section will ask you to read about 4 or 5 passages and answer reading comprehension questions about them.
Now, it may be really difficult to choose between the two different tests, and they're kind of structured differently. And I think based on how you are as a person and how you feel more comfortable is the best route of how you should choose whether taking the SAT or the ACT. So from my experience with talking with my friends and other colleagues, I guess you can say, most of them feel like if they are better at reading and writing, they felt better with the SAT, and if they were really good at math and science, they felt really good about the ACT. So it's really a personal preference of how you think you can do your best ability on these standardized tests.
Exactly, and colleges usually don't have a preference on which one you submit, so definitely take both multiple times. For example, I took my SAT 4 times and my ACT twice, and I only sent in my ACT because I just personally felt like that score was stronger. But definitely take both multiple times, and that's really the only way you can figure out which one works for you. And another thing you might want to think about is any test you take will stay on your testing record, so you might not want to take a test until you're sufficiently ready to take it, because certain colleges ask you to send in all of your scores. Also, another thing to consider is taking the PSAT, which a lot of students take in their sophomore year. And the great thing about the PSAT is, 1, it'll help prepare you to take the SAT, and 2, if you score high enough, you can qualify for the National Merit Scholarship, which will give you probably a good amount of funding for actual college.
Also, the SAT will have an option where you can submit your scores for free if you initially check that when you're registering for the SAT. So that's something to consider, but you won't be able to see your score initially, and you won't have the option to send it after you see what your score is. So that's also something to consider. And then while preparing for the actual exam, make sure you start looking at Barron's, Kaplan, and Princeton Review books, or any kind of other supplement that can prepare you for these tests, and taking these practice tests to get used to the structure and timing yourself to have the timing out right, because time feels really short during those standardized tests. And if a lot of actual libraries have access to a lot of these standardized testing, so make sure to check that out.
Also, if one of those books he mentioned, Kaplan, Barron, and Princeton Review, don't work for you, don't be discouraged and say these books just don't work, because different ones are tailored to different types of learning. So for example, I like Princeton Review, Aaron likes Barron. That's just how it happened. So just find one that works for you and stick with it. You should also check to see if the schools you're applying to require subject tests. Some schools don't require any subject tests, while others require 3. And subject tests are administered by College Board, the same company that makes the SAT, and they offer a whole bunch of different topics that you can be tested on. I think there's about 20, and they cover things such as literature, biology, chemistry, history, and there are also foreign language subject tests such as German, French, and Spanish, and there are numerous other subject tests that you can take.
Now, because of the specificity of the subject test, you might find it a little bit tad harder than like the regular actual exam on the SAT. So if you take like the SAT subject test for math, you might find that a little bit harder than like the regular section on the regular SAT. Or if you take the literature subject test, you might find it a little bit harder than the English section or the writing section, reading and writing section on the SAT. Now, it's really important to consider because like now the subject tests still have point deductions. So if you put down an incorrect answer, you'll actually lose points for that, unlike the rest of the SAT where you're not penalized for putting down the wrong answer. So make sure you also consider that while going through your practice test. And going through, they also have specific books for SAT subject tests, which are definitely very helpful when you're trying to choose which subject test to take. For example, I think it's really also helpful to take, like, for math, take the same kind of math class that's going to be with the SAT subject test, select, because Math 1 and Math 2 go over a lot of trigonometry and pre-calculus. So if you're taking pre-calculus and trigonometry, you'll have like a better understanding of what's going on. You won't forget about it when you're trying to like make up for that on senior year, which I unfortunately did for like bio. And so don't make that same mistake so that you can be on top of the game and you have a better score and you feel more comfortable about the subject.
And subject tests are really your chance to show your school what your expertise in and what you spend a majority of your time in high school learning about. So one strategy might be to take a subject test in every class that you had an AP or IB test. I personally did that and I thought it was very helpful because generally they cover the same material, the AP and IB test and the subject test, and you've already done all this work for it, so you already have the knowledge to take these tests. And in some cases, when the subject tests are offered before your AP or IB test, they can be actually good practice tests to see what you know and what you don't know before you take your actual AB or IB test. And also, in some cases, your subject test can also give you college credit, depending on what school you go to.
So after all this, don't let all this overwhelm you. I mean, it's a lot. I know there's like 20 subject tests that it's just an insane amount. But it's just key to know to just like sit back, kind of feel where your interests are and where you feel like your specialties or your strong suits are. And then take those practice tests to get orientated to how the test is set up. And then just put in your best effort and you should be fine.
That's exactly right. And next week, we're going to talk about specific strategies for these tests, which will help you when you're taking them.
Thank you, and I hope you enjoyed this video.